My name is Su Lin. I work full-time at the Free Community Church. I'm the executive pastor, and well, I've attended this church for a couple of years, but it was only last year that I've started full-time here. Yeah. Well, the Free Community Church is, well, essentially we're an inclusive church, an affirming church. We welcome everyone, really, independent of your sexual orientation, your race, your denominational group, your age, and etc. Everyone is welcome here. So we're just like any other regular church, I guess you can say that, except that we really are affirming of all sexual orientations, which I guess currently in terms of, the church scene, so to speak, most churches here still have some issues about affirming same-sex relationships. Yeah, some churches might not have issues with gay and lesbian Christians attending their churches, but they might not be so supportive of them having a leadership role, for example, in the church. So unlike those churches, we really welcome everyone here and we affirm everyone. Human beings. What kind of people come to Free Community Church? I would say most of our members are gay and lesbian, although we do have the whole spectrum. We have heterosexuals coming, bisexuals, persons who are transgendered. Maybe about 65% are gay male and 25% lesbian women, and then the rest, all other sort of sexual orientations. So what kind of programs do we have to help persons reconcile faith and sexuality? I think, in the first place, just coming to the Free Community Church, having this space is the biggest kind of program that anyone can have to help them reconcile faith and sexuality. Just having a space that is affirming, non-judgmental, having a community that loves you, that allows you to explore your relationship with God freely without any fear and shame. I think that in itself is the greatest gift this church can give its members already. Of course, then the environment, being inclusive, we really encourage study here of scripture, of theologies, the kind of discussions and conversations we have. We really unpack our faith and then put it back together, and I think that's a very, very meaningful process. So we adhere to the Wesleyan quadrilateral, which is a bit of Christian jargon, but tradition, scripture, reason, and experience. So we really hold fast with these four elements in living out our faith and doing theology. So we study scripture, we do study about our traditions as well and how that contributes to our faith. What are contemporary studies, saying about certain things. And of course, more importantly, and is our experience of the divine, of God working in our lives. And that's very important too. We don't exist in a vacuum, and God speaks to us through our lives. So we encourage that kind of study and conversations here and now. Therefore, our sermons, our cell groups, which are small study groups and support groups, we explore these issues. And thirdly, we have specific programs that deal with reconciliation issues. They're called Living Water, and that's for gay men, and LUSH, Lesbians United for Self-Help, it's for lesbian women. And in these programs, essentially, we look at, again, the four aspects. For example, scripture, we'll look at sort of verses in the Bible, usually, 6 of them, that traditionally is used against homosexuality. But there's a lot of misconception and translation issues, interpretation issues surrounding those verses, and so we study them. Part of that support group would be talking about what it means to be gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgendered, what that means for our faith, living as Christians, things like coming out, getting community support. So all that comes under that program as well. So these are some initiatives we have. With a lot of guilt, because being Christian, I'd been taught that that was a sin, that was not right in God's eyes, and all of those arguments. And I actually stayed away from church for a long time because I couldn't quite reconcile it for myself in my head. But in my heart, I never walked away from God, and I don't believe my relationship with God ever stopped. Maybe it didn't grow as exponentially because I wasn't studying, I wasn't thinking about spiritual questions, I wasn't free before God, and I guess in that sense my relationship was stunted. But I never stopped loving God, and I don't believe God stopped loving me. And I still don't believe that. Yeah. So, you know, it's a process of self-discovery. But religion was put aside for a long time. And I mean, there's no other way to say it but, you know, I felt God calling me back in very strong, dramatic ways. And that's how I resumed my walk, so to speak, and where I really went to look for information on, you know, what it means to be lesbian and a Christian, looking at how I can reconcile my faith and sexuality, what are the arguments for and against, you know. It was a pretty objective study, you know, it wasn't just one-sided. But more importantly, I really listened to my experiences and my heart and my spirit. And I sensed it was, you know, God calling and me responding. And I didn't sense any judgment or rejection from God. It was more from the church or what the church teaches. Yeah.
Oh, are you out to your parents?
Yes, I'm out to my parents. I wasn't for the longest time, although I'm sure they, you know, suspected and kind of knew something was up for quite a number of years, because, you know, I would stay over at my partner's place or she would come over. And my parents are very supportive, you know. I'm very blessed in that sense. So they give me a lot of space to, you know, discover who I am. And they are, you know, on the wings kind of supporting me. But still, I couldn't come out to them for a long time because I guess I have very high expectations of myself. And I didn't want to be seen as a disappointment to them. So I kind of kept this part of myself from them, which is unfortunate, because I think I then excluded them from some of the more momentous events in my life or struggles that I had in my relationship, which I'm sure they would have been able to give good advice or, you know, at least a listening ear, that kind of thing. So I kind of shut out this aspect of my life from them for quite a bit of time. And it's only, you know, in not that many years ago that I actually came out to them officially. Yeah. I would say I'm out to maybe 80% of people. I mean, and the other 20%, either I've lost touch or they're really new people. So, and I don't see the need to shout about my sexual orientation to every single person I meet. You know, if they find out or they ask, that's fine. But no, it's not my top priority to tell everyone, hi, I'm Su Lin, I'm lesbian.
Hey, come back.
Of course, coming out in terms of, you know, contributing to the community is there too. You know, when you are positive about who you are, you share that with others in the community, and it's a trickle-on effect. And it's only then that, you know, as a community, you can educate others as well about what being, you know, LGBT, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender is about. That you can help to change, you know, mindsets, you know, stereotypes or myths or all these things that people believe, you know, LGBT persons are, but we're not, you know. But no one's really having those conversations in a very meaningful way because we ourselves are not confident enough to have them yet. So coming out lends to that kind of confidence, and it, you know, as more and more of us come out, then as a community we can engage with others more and bring them alongside this journey. I do think that, I mean, there are two stages to coming out. One is coming out to yourself firstly, and then coming out to others. And coming out to yourself really means accepting yourself and loving yourself for who you are. And part of that process could include reading up on literature, you know, learning what being gay or lesbian, bisexual, transgender is about, talking to other people that you can trust about it, people in the community. And you know, it's so great that now we have so many community groups that offer programs and support where you can explore your sexuality in a safe environment and in an affirming environment. I won't go into them because I think, you know, some of them you've interviewed them as well. But, you know, resources online and etc. So take your time to explore your sexuality and who you are and understand that. Work out your issues. You know, I would recommend that before you even decide to come out, because coming out, you know, can be sweet, it can also be a bit sour in the sense that you never know who's going to accept you or reject you. And if you're not strong enough in terms of your own identity and you start facing a lot of rejection, then that could be very detrimental to your core personhood, you know. So be ready when you want to come out, you know, do your research. Make sure you have that community with you already who can come alongside you, your friends or your, you know, larger, you know, gay and lesbian community or communities. And I wouldn't recommend coming out, let's say if you're a young person and you're living at home and you're receiving an allowance from your parents and you kind of already know that your parents will not take it well or they might throw you out. I would say then what is the purpose of coming out at that age? Unless you feel so strongly about it and it's affecting your ability to move on in life, sure, but make sure you have all those other areas that I talked about just now. But don't feel pressurized to come out if you're not ready, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And coming out at church as well, make sure you think through, because your church might ask you to leave, they might not. If you're serving in a ministry or a leader, they might ask you to step down. Are you ready for all of that? Perhaps make sure you have an alternative Christian community waiting. For example, FCC, where you can continue your Christian walk and not have that break if the church is slightly more rejecting of you. So if I think back to, let's say when I was in university to now, in terms of the development of the LGBTQ community, it's definitely come a long way. When I was in university, we hardly had any resources, or you couldn't find books in the library or in the bookshop about being gay and lesbian. Maybe some, for example, that time Tower Records, they had a bookstore right at Pacific Plaza. We would go there and get all the literature on sexuality, and that was great. But beyond that, it was very hard to get literature. Hardly any resources, no community groups at that time, very very few not like what you have today, like Uga Chaga or Youth Out Here, Red Queen,